Hello there, my name is Michael Kies and I'm author of the Make More Sales series of seminars, and I want to welcome you and I want to thank you for your time in looking at these videos. You see, what do real estate officers want? Every real estate officer wants this. We want to make more sales, don't we? I've been in real estate for nearly 25 years and I can tell you now, we all want to make more sales. But did I get off to a flying start? No, I didn't. I struggled for the first 6 months. In fact, I had a period where I didn't sell a house for 7 long weeks. Now, I was on debit credit, so I wasn't feeling too good about myself. And at the end of that 7-week period, I thought real estate's not for me. So I wrote out my letter of resignation, had it in my top pocket, and before I had a chance to hand it in, a flyer arrived on my desk. And in that flyer, the trainer said, "Come to my seminar and I will teach you how to sell." Now, I got really interested in this flyer, but the only problem was it was $95. And I didn't have $95 to spare at that time. Now, I know you said it sounds like a small amount of money today, but in those days, in 1988, it was a lot of money. So I went home, discussed it with my wife. She was hairdressing in the laundry to put food on the table. And we decided that I should invest the money in myself and go. Now, my work colleagues, what they said to me was, make sure you don't get conned into buying his books and tapes, because all he's trying to do is sell his books and tapes. Well, I went there on the day. I got there early. I sat in the middle so I couldn't be picked out because I was scared somebody was going to ask me how sales were going. So I took copious notes. I really was interested in the day. I learned heaps, and I didn't buy the books and tapes in the first break. I didn't buy the books and tapes in the second break. But in the third break, I went over and I invested in the books and tapes, and they were $700. We had $1,000 left in our reserve fund. I spent $700 on these books and tapes. Well, it was the most wonderful day I ever had and the best investment I ever made. I started listening to those cassettes on the way home, and the very next month, from what I learned, I went from no house sales in 7 weeks to 19 house sales the very month. The very next month, within 18 months, I was awarded the top salesperson for the franchise group. Can you believe that? Going from no sales in 7 weeks, I get a bit of training and I start to study, practice, drill and rehearse things, and I go and become awarded the top salesperson for that franchise group. Then in 1990, I bought my own franchise, which was part of an international franchise group. For 5 consecutive years, because I continued to study and train and drill and rehearse, I was awarded the top salesperson for that franchise group in South Australia and Northern Territory for 5 consecutive years. And then in 1995, I was awarded top salesperson for the franchise group internationally for the number of properties sold. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I was a dropout at school. People told me I'd never amount to anything. Has that ever happened to you, where people have told you you'll never amount to anything? Well, don't listen to them. Get hooked on studying, get hooked on training and learning, and things will start to happen in your life that you never believed were possible. And you'll create prosperity for yourself and your family that is going to be just fantastic for you in the future. But let's look at real estate. Let's look at what it's all about. Real estate is about 3 simple things. And those three simple things are these. First of all, you've got to find a listing. And then you've got to list the listing. The second thing you've got to do is you've got to get the price right. So you've got to reduce that listing if you haven't priced it well to start with. And the third thing you've got to do is you've got to be able to sell. In this market, and in any average market, you must be able to help buyers make the decision to buy the house that's right for them. Otherwise, they will just go off and buy from somebody else who can help them make that decision. People want to be helped to make a big decision in their lives. So they're the 3 things. You've got to list well, you've got to reduce well, and you've got to sell well. Today, we're going to talk a bit about listing well. One of the things that amazes me is that some salespeople do extremely well in selling real estate. And they're making a lot of money, but they don't keep it. You've got to save. And I'm developing a program at the moment to show you how to save in real estate. how to save the money that you earn, because a lot of money can slip through your fingers. And the reason that I'm passionate about this is because December the 5th, 2008 was a turning point in my life. I'd always worked hard and I had been taught to save. In this university of life, I've been very lucky to have so many good teachers in my life. But I've been taught to save. December the 5th, 2008 was the day I was diagnosed with leukemia. And I ended up in the leukemia ward of the Royal Adelaide Hospital. In that ward, there was another guy there about my age, and he couldn't afford the bus ticket for his wife to come and see him. How sad is that? To be 50 years old and you can't afford a bus ticket for your wife to come and see you. At least, I know I was pretty ill at the time, but at least my financial foundation was solid and I didn't have to worry about the finances of my family. And I thought if I didn't make it through, well, at least my family were going to be secure because I had worked hard and I had saved some money. But real estate's all about this. The starting point is to find good saleable listings. And what you've got to do, there's a simple formula that you can follow, and you take this and with massive action, you will get massive results. How do I know this? Because I have done it many times. But in 1990, when I bought that franchise, there were four listings on the books. 4, that's all. Within 12 months, we had over 100 listings on the books at any given time. We were averaging over 20 sales per month with just 3 of us in the office. How can a business that only has 4 listings on the books and they were selling about 15 houses a year go from that to 100 listings and 20 sales per month? It was through massive action. And one of the things that we started to do was this. See, I've never been one to, my arithmetic's not too great, and I've never been one to count, basically, because I always look at building relationships. And if you go out and you go out on the doors and your goal is to build relationships with people, that's what you want. You want to be building relationships. Everybody in our office had to go out door knocking for 3 hours a day. And so we went out and we started building relationships. And then our signs started popping up and we got sold signs on them and we made more sales. I want to share a story with you. I had a young lad out and he was door knocking. And he was out knocking on doors and he was having a bad day, and he came into my office, his knuckles were dragging along the ground, and he said, "Michael, nobody's selling." I said, "What, nobody?" He said, "No, nobody's selling." I said, "Really?" I said, "You know what that means?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, then we've got to close the doors. We've just got to close it down, because if there's nobody selling." I said, "Don't be so ridiculous. Of course there's people selling." So I grabbed hold of his hand. He thought I was taking him out for a coffee somewhere, but instead I walked straight through the car park. We went out to the street out the back of the office, 10th Street. First door I knock on, guess what? People are selling. Isn't that just amazing? It's mindset, going out to build relationships. Well, I stayed out with him that afternoon. And that afternoon, I built 3 relationships, and all 3 of these relationships sold. When I say relationships, let me tell you about the first lady. She had a knee operation. She was sitting out the back of her house sunning herself. I walked around the back, sat down, had a chat with her, asked her how she was, and I built a relationship with her. The next relationship that I built is a lady that she lived in this old cottage that needed renovation. I knocked on her door. I said, "Hi, it's Michael Kies from Kies Real Estate. You're thinking on moving, or can I help you with real estate?" And she said, "No, I'm fine, I'm going to stay." I said, "Okay, how are you?" She said, "I'm not too well. I've got some aches and pains." She was in her 80s, and we started talking. And then she said, "You want to come in for a cup of tea?" And I broke all the rules. You've got to break rules in sales. I went in to have a cup of tea. I sat down at the table with her, and it turned out that she picked grapes with my grandfather. And I love my grandfather. He's no longer with us, but I loved him. And it was just really fantastic. So we built a good relationship. I went out door knocking for the rest of the day and I built another relationship. But with this lady, when I got back to the office that night, I sent her a thank you card. And it was still on a mantelpiece the day that I sold her house. And then I would have visited her about 3 times over the next 2 years. I phoned her once every 2 months, and I sent her notes and cards every now and again. And when the day came that she had a fall and she had to sell that house, she said, Michael Kies is the only person who's going to be selling my house. And I went in, I listed at the price it needed to be listed at, and then the sale was made within a week. It was a prime sale, all because I'd built a relationship 2 years before. How many relationships are you building? How many relationships are you out there building today? Now let me share with you how much that was worth. That afternoon, I wouldn't have knocked on more than 50 houses. I wouldn't have knocked on 50, it was probably less than that, but to make these figures look okay, let's say I knocked on 50 doors that afternoon. That fee from that sale was $11,000. Now you don't get $11,000, you get about 40%. So let's say you got $4,400 out of the $11,000. 4,400 divided by 50, and remember, we're only talking about one of the sales. I made three sales from the relationships I built that afternoon. So I'm only talking about one of the sales. So 4,400 divided by 50 is $88. If you knew there was $88 behind at every door that you went and knocked on, wouldn't you go out and wouldn't you want to go out and find those saleable listings, those $88? If I said there was $50 at that door, if I said there was $70 behind the door, if I said there was $80, $85, and you still said to me that's not enough, I said, well, look, I'll throw in another $3, another $1, it's $86, another $2 there, that's $88 at every door that you go to. Would you go out and how many doors would you knock on today? Tell me. How many doors would you knock on today if you knew every one of those, every person you spoke to was going to give you $88? Is your fee $11,000 or is it more? Because if it's more, that's going to be higher. And if I added in the other 2 sales that came in, that would be 3 times that. So we're looking at about $240 per door from the sales that I made from that one afternoon that I was out there building relationships. So go out to build relationships. That's got to be your goal. But why don't most people do it? You see, most people don't do it because they believe it's beneath them. They don't want to go out and have to door knock for business. A lot of these people have been taught they've got to go out and be some sort of person they're not. Go out and be yourself. Just ask people whether they're thinking about moving in the near future, and then ask them, how are you? Start building the relationships. But I've had people, no kidding, I've had people in real estate and I've asked them to go out and make some prosperity for themselves because their sales figures are low, and they've quit. They've gone. Because I've asked them to go out and be prosperous, make some prosperity for themselves. You see, if you rely on office leads, what's going to happen is you're going to starve. It's as simple as that. You've got to go out and create some leads for yourself. Let's look at the disciplines you need to be able to do this. The first thing is you need discipline. I know I've just mentioned that, but I'm going to say it again. You need the discipline to go out first thing every morning and door knock for 3 hours and talk to people, or just speak to people and build relationships with people. And if you come back with no people that are selling immediately, but you've got 2 or 3 great relationships that you've built, and you can write thank you notes to them, and then when you get on the phones to make your calls, you are dealing with warm calls, people who you're building relationships with, you are on the road to greatness, because they will filter through and come through, and a day will come when you'll get so much referral business from these great relationships you've built where you won't have to door knock ever again. How do I know this? Because I door knocked flat out for 2 consecutive years, and then I got so busy with the referrals coming through, I never had to door knock again. But I know if I ever did get in a sales slump, all I had to do was go out and knock on the doors again. So if you're in a bit of a slump at the moment, go out and collect those $88 and then get the mindset. The second thing is the mindset here is not to do the numbers, is to build the relationships. You see, if you build the relationships, you're on your road to greatness and prosperity in real estate sales. And the third thing is, you've got to make everybody you speak to feel important. You've got to make them feel important. You've got to treat everybody as if they've got a sign around their neck that says, "Make me feel important." All the books I've read on rapport building say this: the first 4 seconds people will have an opinion about you, and the next 30 seconds they'll make a decision about you, and then they'll spend the rest of the time justifying their decision. Isn't that amazing? 34 seconds. Well, I'm going to share a story with you about how this happened in real life at our house. We wanted to buy, well, we did buy a solar electricity system with all the solar panels on the roof. And that solar electricity system, I wanted to put the biggest and the best in, so I was going to get some quotes. The first guy that came out to quote, he comes in our back gate, and we've got 2 dogs, a Siberian Husky and a Beagle. The Siberian Husky jumps up on him and stains his shirt. You would have thought that this shirt was worth $10,000, the way he carried on about it. He was going on, my wife sponged it down for him, got the mud stain off. She even offered to wash the shirt for him. And he said, no, that's fine. Well, he had got off to the wrong start with my wife, because anybody who doesn't like my wife's dogs might as well say, "I don't like you, Tina." They might as well say that, because that's exactly what they're doing. Anyway, this guy comes in, and I give everybody a good listening to, because I present to people every day of the week. I go out and I prospect, and so I'll give everybody a good listening to. Anyway, he's sitting on this side of the table. I'm sitting here, he's sitting there, my wife is ironing behind him. And during the presentation, he says to my wife, "Well, you won't be doing that during the day." And she says, "Why not?" He says, "Because you're using the expensive power that you're getting paid the feedback tariff on. You've got to do that over night time." She said, "Look, I'm a busy person. I run 2 businesses, and I will do the ironing when I like." And he said, "Well, there's a list of things here that I suggest you don't do during the day." Well, my goodness me, had he got my wife offside? She was standing behind him, and I was trying to keep a straight face, because this is what I had to watch. I was watching him on this side of the table, then I was watching my wife over here, and she was going like this. Get him out. In fact, I reckon if she'd had my samurai sword, I don't think that he would have made it out alive, because he really didn't have any chance. Then he never followed us up. Whereas the next guy that came along, he loved my wife's dogs. He loved them, and he patted them, and he didn't care whether they stained his shirt. And guess who got the business? She said, "I feel comfortable with him, I like him." And there it was, the rapport in the first 34 seconds. Now, what is rapport building? Well, everybody knows what matching is, and everybody knows what pacing is. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said they don't know what leading is. And leading is just when you get in sync with people. You've got to match them, pace them, and then lead them to help them make the right decision that's right for them. You never use anything in this great and this wonderful profession of selling to help people make decisions other than what's right for them. Once you know about rapport, and once you understand how it all works, you'll be amazed at how your conversion rates on your listing appointments to your listings goes through the roof, and you'll be on your way to prosperity. What do most people want? Most people want a good listening to. People crave attention. Oh my goodness me, we are in a distraction-filled world, and to get somebody to give you their full attention is one of the scarcest things. And one of the ways you can impress people is just give them your full attention. If you're with somebody and your phone rings, just say, "I'm just going to turn that off, and now where were you?" And you always ask people to finish the story about what they were talking to you about. It makes them feel important. Be an attention giver, don't be an attention seeker. I want to tell you about my first listing. I started in real estate on December the 23rd, 1987. That's a long time ago. On December the 22nd, my new leader had a barbecue for Christmas, and we went to that, had a few sausages, and then my wife said, "We've got to go and buy this baby seat." So we drove out to this house, and we pulled up outside, and my wife said to me, "Do you want to go in, or shall I go in?" I said, no, I'll go in because I've got to start learning how to talk to people because I was quite introverted. I was quite shy. So I went in and I was quite nervous. And I handed over the $2 and bought the baby seat and thought, this is quite incredible because it would have cost this guy more than that to put the ad in the paper. Anyway, I buy the baby seat and then I asked the question. I just said, do you like living here, John? And he said, no, I don't. In fact, we're putting the house on the market tomorrow. I said, you really? That's unbelievable. You're going to put the house on the market tomorrow? I said, I'm starting in real estate tomorrow. I'll see you at 9 tomorrow morning. And there was my first listing. Now, this is the most beautiful house you've ever seen. The asbestos just glistens in the sunlight. But it was my first listing and my first sale. And oh, it was so good. And what that taught me was, you've just got to ask. You just got to ask people. Do you like living here, John? No, we're putting the house on the market tomorrow. Wham! There's a listing there. How good is that? Then I learned in 1988 this, and I call it the unbelievable principle. When somebody says to you, how's real estate? You say, unbelievable. But even better if I had more houses to sell. Who do you know who's thinking about selling? It's a beautiful thing. And if people don't ask you, how's real estate? Just ask them, what do I need to know about you and your business to be able to refer people to you? And they'll soon ask you what you do, and then you can tell them that you're in real estate, and they'll say, how is it? Unbelievable. But even better if I had more houses to sell. Who do you know who's thinking about selling? Let me show you how this works. I had a toothache, and it was a bad toothache. My whole face was swollen. So I finally went to the dentist. I'm sitting in the dentist's chair, and he says, it's got to come out. The tooth has had it. But he said, we can't take it out for 7 days because the infection is so bad that the anaesthetic won't work and it'll hurt like crazy. I said, you don't understand. If you give me antibiotics and I go away for 7 days, what it'll mean is you'll never see me again because I couldn't stand the thought to think about having a tooth pulled for 7 days. So I said, pull it out now. He said, but it's going to hurt. I said, pull it out now. So I'm sitting in the seat and he gives me an injection, as much of the anaesthetic as he could, and I could still feel it. The next minute he gets in there and he just yanks it and pulls it out. He says, wow, that came out clean. And I heard the pop. I won't go into all the gory details, but they stuff that stuff in your mouth, the gauze, is it called gauze? Put it in my mouth, and he said, now bite down. So I was biting down on my right gum. So there I am biting down on my right gum. And I walk out to reception, and the girl at reception says to me, Michael, how's real estate? Unbelievable! Even better if I want houses to sell. Who do you know who's thinking about selling? That's how I would have spoken. And she said, well, actually, Mum and Dad are putting the house on the market. I said, when? She said, this afternoon. I said, what time can I come up? She said, 4 o'clock. But she said, you can't come up, you've got to go and rest. I said, no, I'll be there at 4. So I went up there and listed their house at 4 o'clock. And I think I got it because they felt sorry for me because I was still feeling a bit sorry for myself from having the tooth pulled. But bang, there it was, a listing all through. Unbelievable. But even better if I had more houses to sell. Who do you know who's thinking about selling? Another technique I'll give you right now for listings is this. Is what you do is when you're talking to a buyer, you build rapport with the buyer. When the time is right, you say to the buyer, hey, you're a cash buyer. And they'll more than likely say they've got a house to sell. And then when they say they've got a house to sell, you just ask this beautiful question, what's it worth? And when they say, oh, we don't know what it's worth, you then say, well, I better come out and have a look at your house to give you an idea of what it's worth so that you know what price range you can look at when you're looking for your new house to move into. And then you use the alternate choice clause. So is during the week better or weekend better for you? Oh, well, weekend, Saturday or Sunday? Sunday. Sunday morning or afternoon? Afternoon, 2 or 4 o'clock? 2 o'clock. Okay, I'll see you 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. You have a qualified listing appointment. Isn't this exciting stuff? Go and use this material. It works. I'm going to show you how to position yourself so that when people think about real estate, they think about you. Now, there's a thing called the Crook 3 hit theory. And the Crook 3 hit theory is this, is that you've got to touch people 3 times. So you go out and you door knock, you build the relationship, you give them a thank you card, you phone them and you go and see them again. You've covered at least the 3 times. But on top of that, you need to have flyers going out. And one of the flyers I suggest you do is the wanted ad. Now the wanted ad is an ad that was taught to me by a guy by the name of Graham, who was a successfully retired real estate agent. He was only in his 40s, and he built this 50 square house overlooking the township of Gawler. And I went up there every week and I'd say, how do I find more listings? How do I find more listings? And he said, well, have you tried a wanted ad? I said, no, what's a wanted ad? He said, well, I'll show you what a wanted ad is. So he said, you find me a buyer. So I went out that week, I found some good cash buyers from Victoria looking to buy a house in the R.E.I.S.A Valley. So I sat down with him and he said, now you write it like this. I always remember this: house up here, wanted urgently, and then into the script of the ad. And he said, you prove the buyer, couple from Victoria, looking to move their family to the great R.E.I.S.A Valley, and you prove that the buyer exists. And he said, you put some touch points, and the touch points in that ad where they were cash buyers, they're ready to buy now, can arrange settlement to suit you. So I put plenty of touch points in there. I took that ad, put it on the front page of the local paper, and I got 5 listings from it. 5 listings. And then he said, why don't you use it as a flyer? So then I put it in Australia Post and I sent it out as a flyer. He said, just use an envelope size card and a yellow card with red print on it, and you say urgent please read on one side, and then you put the wanted ad on the other side, and on the other side you just highlight some of the points that are the touch points for the buyer, like cash settlement, ready to suit you, settlement to suit you, and you just highlight some of these things. Well, I sent that card out and I got more listings from it. And I got one of the most bizarre listings that I've ever had in my life, where a guy, he said he only wanted $65,000 for his house. And I said, I think we can get between $80,000 and $90,000. I put it on the market for $89,000. We got $85,000 from that couple from Victoria. I went back to see him and said, here, we've got $85,000. You know how excited you get when you got more than the owner really wants? And you say, I've got $85,000. And he says, but I only wanted 65. I told you I only wanted 65,000. Anyway, I took the 85, but it was the most bizarre thing, one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened to me. How often does that happen? How often does that happen in your career? So you go out and you do this, you'll become more prosperous in your life. So real estate is all about being in touch and developing relationships. Now, we've spoken today very briefly about one part of the list, reduce and sell. And that one part is split into other parts, but that one part is listings and finding listings. And that's pretty much all we've spoken about today. In further sessions, what I'll be talking about is how to list the listings, then how to reduce, and then how to sell. Because if you can't sell in this market, you're going to just be so far behind the 8 ball. You're going to be like me, no sale for 7 weeks. You learned how to sell 19 sales in the very next month. I want to share with you what I've learned over the last nearly 25 years in real estate about my experiences and how I've studied and learned and what I've studied and learned so that you can make more sales. Remember this, remember that every moment counts. We only get one shot at this life. So make every day a masterpiece in this wonderful world of real estate. I don't know of anything else as good as real estate is create prosperity in your life and have a lot of fun. And I want to leave you with this thought today. I talked before about making everybody feel important. Well, this has changed my life. What you've got to do is this, is you've got to turn this around and you've got to make your most significant other people in your life feel as though they're the most important clients you've ever had. You do this with your spouses, you do it with your children, and you watch how your life changes. It just gets better and better and better. Have a great life, go out there and make more sales, and live to